Hey guys, welcome back. So now with getting into Death Metal Part 6, the Anti-Crisis continues. And really at this point, the whole topic of Anti-Crisis, which has been thrown around this whole event like heavily, like it's definitely making more sense now. But the bigger question mark that most of us have, like I believe, it's mainly two things. Like one, how reasonable would the final ending be? But also, what does that mean to the continuity going forward? Like how would they mesh? So let's get into all that. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping in, we pick up right where we left off, because as far as the plan to save the universe, or to win, if that's a thing here, everyone from Earth Zero understands that Earth Zero is your prime Earth, which doesn't necessarily mean just that planet, but Earth Zero is your prime designation for your prime DC universe. And because every world in the Dark Multiverse is made from the nightmares from the people of the prime universe, this is what brought forth the idea of wrecking Earth Zero in hopes of weakening the Batman Who Laughs and giving Wonder Woman and Lobo the time to follow through with Lex Luthor's plan. And it worked enough to get the attention of the Darkest Knight, who at this point is still fighting Perpetua. But even still, he's created the Multiverse Who Laughs, which has tons of other incarnations of all the heroes, who in this case they're not all from the Dark Multiverse, because most are from the few worlds that the One Who Laughs could create within this short amount of time, and then along with them you have some others from the Dark Multiverse. But with the One Who Laughs who had sent them all here to Earth Zero, it was really like a last-ditch effort when he had noticed all the heroes and the villains who had teamed up and they started tearing things apart, and so he was pretty much like, okay, let me send in what I got. And in comparison to everyone who's still alive from Earth Zero, and kind of alive, well, whatever passes for alive as far as Batman, with him confessing in the last issue that he been dead, which is one of those things that just has me thinking, man, like if you really want to stop the Darkest Knight, and I mean this is just a crazy idea, I'm just throwing it at the wall, see if it sticks, but being that he's a nightmare Bruce Wayne, like what if Earth Zero Bruce Wayne just stayed dead? Like dead. I mean, it's worth a shot. Like I would have told Bruce, like, hey, take that ring off, let me see something. And like if nothing happens, just give it back to him, because at this point he's already dead. But on top of that, I will say that even that idea is pretty tricky, because the Batman Who Laughs is technically now the Darkest Knight, and through his transformations, who knows how much or how far that would affect him. But even still, I would say taking the ring off thing is worth a shot. But that doesn't happen. But instead, what's pretty clever is that Batman still makes use of that ring, and he resurrects the body of the Batman Who Laughs, and he brings him out to fight against the Darkest Knight's army. And I'm telling you, like if that ain't some Batman innovation, like I don't know what is. But from here, then jumping over to Wonder Woman and Lobo, they're both making their way through the passage to the Forge of Worlds. And at this point, if I'm not mistaken, this is similar to what we had seen in Dark Knight's Metal when Daniel Hall had led Batman and Superman through the dream space so that they can make their way to the Forge of Worlds as well. And that's really just my guess at this point, because much like after Batman and Superman had left Daniel, after meeting him and going to Lucian's library, they spoke with Daniel in what I believe is the same exact place, which is the in-between area where dreams and nightmares more or less connect between the people and where they would manifest in the Dark Multiverse, for example. And much like back then, it also led to the Forge of Worlds. So I'm just going with that. But with Wonder Woman and Lobo passing through here, for one, for the most part it's inactive. And Diana's guess to that is probably because nobody knows what's next. But then as soon as she says that, the fears from everyone on Earth Zero, like their concentrated fear of the Batman Who Laughs, it then manifests and attacks them here, causing Lobo to sacrifice himself so Diana can make it to the Forge. And it's a crazy concept to think about, because everybody in the universe having one fear. Like let's come together and have a nightmare. And I'm sure if Perpetua could see this, she'd be a little upset, because she'd be like, what? Ain't nobody having nightmares about me? What, y'all don't care about me? Because clearly all the fear in the world is focused now on the One Who Laughs, and that fear manifested in this dream space snatches Lex's journal from Diana just before she can make her way to the Forge, which now leaves her on her way to the solution with no instructions whatsoever. But now in the case of the actual Darkest Knight, at this point in time he's still fighting Perpetua, and it's kind of crazy because there's technically three of this guy running around right now. Like you got the real one here fighting Perpetua, and then you have like the mid-nightmare beta version destroying Lobo, and then you have the zombie Batman Who Laughs running around on Earth Zero under the control of Earth Zero Bruce Wayne. Like it's a lot of Batmans who's laughing right now. But in this case, in this fight between Perpetua and the Darkest Knight, like the actual Darkest Knight, it very much came to the conclusion that Lex Luthor had predicted, with the Darkest Knight destroying Perpetua, and with doing so he trapped her within fragments of the Source Wall. And when this happens, Perpetua kind of gives like her last plea, which is like her last words more or less, and first she tries to make a deal with the Darkest Knight, telling him like, hey, your powers are limited, maybe we can come to some sort of deal, because all in all she wanted the creatures of this universe to evolve. That's why she rebelled against the Source, or at least she says that's why, but at the end of the day we know that she did that because she didn't want to die. And for the Darkest Knight, he doesn't see any value in taking a deal here, and for that reason he destroys Perpetua and takes what's left of her power, which in his case now has evolved him to god level status, of which he has looted his way to the top. And when this happens, like the heroes on Earth Zero, and like I said before, like I don't like calling them heroes because it's heroes and villains and anti-heroes, but all in all the protagonists. But when the Darkest Knight defeats Perpetua and his army starts to fall back, like the reaction from these guys is kind of mixed, because you have some who believe that they won, others who feel like, okay, something has shifted and something feels different. And then you have others like Batman, who literally has one arm at this point, but he's one of the few who truly realize what had happened, because he understands that the Darkest Knight had to have won, and that's why the Darkest Knight's army is falling back, and that's why everyone has noticed that something has changed, like everyone can feel it to a capacity. But when this happens, I just love how the Darkest Knight, like his head just comes over the horizon like the sunrise, like here comes the sun. Because just to put it into perspective, like there is no upstaging this guy now, and with the way that this is done, it's questionable if even the hand or the Source could contain him like they did Perpetua. But aside from that, it's very clear that everyone here of the remaining protagonists on Earth Zero have no chance against this guy, let alone his army of favorite nightmares who he's brought along with him, in addition to the army from the multiverse who laughs who are already there. And this now brings back like your original Nightmare Batman, the Robin King and his planet of goblins, but on top of that, like your nightmare characters from the multiverse who laughs, like they have probably got to be some of the worst, because in their case they're intentionally made into something dark from the imagination of the Darkest Knight, like the Superman for instance, that rather than just feeding on the yellow sun, he had actually been corrupted on his way to Earth, so that now rather than feeding directly from the sun, he feeds off of burning flesh, and it just goes from there. But as a whole, these aren't characters from a universe that's like what could possibly go wrong, but instead the multiverse who laughs is based on how bad can I make this get. Like it's very intentional and leaned into. But also at this point, with things not looking good at all on Earth Zero, also over at the Forge of Worlds, Diana makes her way there and she sees Darkseid. And so now prior to this point, we've talked about Darkseid and everything that he's been doing throughout Death Metal, and if I remember correctly, I think I squeezed that into part 4. But as far as leaving from part 4 and connecting that to here, I have no idea what's going on with this guy, because his story is clear like all the way up till Doom Metal, with him trying to restart reality himself, and then there's this version of him we see in Death Metal, which I feel like is not fully blending for me, unless him and Mobius escaped their previous crisis, much like Superboy Prime, which would probably explain Mobius and Darkseid here. But let me not get into that, I'm getting a headache just thinking about it. But with Diana arriving here at the Forge of Worlds without Lex Luthor's journal, she now has no clue how to follow through with the previous plan, with building Lex Luthor's machine, which would free up everyone's memories and unite everyone so she could draw and use that anti-crisis energy. But now without the plans for that machine, she's kinda stuck on that step of what to do next. But it doesn't take long for her to piece it together, because she looks at what needs to be done in the simplest way possible, because at the end of the day, her mission is to get everyone to see the truth, all the history of what's happened from the very beginning throughout every reboot, which all are still events that actually happened, just that nobody remembers. And while she's here at the Forge, she then reforges the lasso of truth, because throughout Death Metal, you know, she's been doing a lot of crafting. And come to think of it, there's been a lot of looting and crafting throughout this series. But all in all, with her figuring this out, she uses the lasso of truth at the Forge of Worlds in order to unite everyone from Earth Zero into one truth and one universe. And ultimately when she does this, it starts working. Like she can feel it working, everyone from Earth Zero can feel it working, and it completely circumvents the whole idea of Lex Luthor's machine being needed in the first place. Because with this being done, the heroes are united and everyone remembers everything all the way back to their first appearance and even back throughout all the different crises. And now they're ready to go against the Darkest Knight, and not so much in a way to overthrow him, but instead undo his Crisis' attempt at rebooting and restarting the universe, which now sets us up for the finale, which is like a tug of war between Crisis and Anti-Crisis energy. But also, like, to bring it back to what I mentioned about Lex Luthor, like, Lex is a smart guy, and I'm pretty sure that when he came to the heroes with this plan, that he knew good and well that it would work without him. Like, I'm sure he knew it would work without his machine. But it's kind of funny how even still he tried to get them to use it, but it didn't work out. And I can't wait to see that moment, like when they confront Lex, like, yeah, everything worked, we did it, but even still we didn't need that machine, Lex. Like, why did you try to make us do that? Like, I can't wait to see Lex's face and hear his answer to that, because at this point it's really looking like that machine, like, it doesn't matter. Because on top of that, with everyone getting their memories restored, Wonder Woman then returns from the Forge of Worlds all gold and completely covered in the truth. So it's like now she is the lasso. But also this has me thinking, like, effectively with this moving forward, this is kind of like the death of reboots for DC. And creatively, anything that comes after this, it'll just be a continuation of events that have already happened. And so man, like, I'm eager to see this finale, like how it plays out, because it really feels like what Marvel Legacy did. But in the case of DC, we still have to see if they're gonna add to the history like Marvel did, or just leave the history be and move forward. And so now real quick, I want to give a shout out to all the patrons and the new patrons joining in, Barry C and the Prodigal 24. But a special shout out to all you guys for supporting the channel, especially recently with everything that's going on. And for the time being, I'll continue to leave updates on Discord. And for all the patrons, you guys can continue to message me on Patreon or over on Discord, whichever you prefer. But all in all, I just want to say thank you to all you guys, because you've all been a huge help. But that'll do it for this one, guys, on our Talks on Death Metal Part 6. Let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.